Hello, thanks for joining me. I'm delighted today to be talking with Stuart Bodycote. Now, if you own a Donnington Norton, I'm sure you'll be familiar with Stuart, at least know his name, but you may not have seen his face before because he's rather camera shy.
Yeah,
so
radio, definitely.
I'm delighted and honoured that you've agreed to actually appear this side of the camera. Thank you very much, Stuart. So, of course, you're known in the 961 community as being the 961 man, the man to be able to
Seems that way,
yeah. Could you give us a bit of background about your involvement with the Donnington factory and how, because now you have your own business, Motorvated Ltd. Just give us a bit of background how you arrived where you are now.
Yeah, so I started at Donnington Hall around about, it was very start of 2016, it's January 2016. I was on production for a short while, then I was moved into engine build along with a couple of other guys. I worked in engine build basically until my savings ran out, topping up my wages. Once the money ran out and I couldn't carry on working there, I left Norton and I went back to the car trade because I'm originally a car mechanic. Mm-hmm. I was in the car trade for about 14 months and then Skinner and Stuart got in touch, invited me back for a chat basically, regards coming back to work on the R&D side of the V4. Basically a spanner monkey for the design engineers. And to be honest, as much as I did give the design engineers a bit of grief, I actually really enjoyed working with them. It was a nice learning curve. We did every day there was something different. I actually really enjoyed that time. It was great fun. And it was nice in that the V4 at the time, we thought, it is a cool bike. I'd happily own one. And it was nice to be at that stage of its birth, essentially. So yeah, really enjoyed that. Stuck with that up until the start of production, basically. So once the V4 just started into production, I then got Stuart asked me, would I consider taking over service? And Stuart knew from the previous year that I was interested in doing service because it sort of gelled well with my time in the motor trade, dealing with customers, customer concerns and seeing it through on the bike, the car in that case, but I could transfer it to motorcycles. So yeah, service bay become available, so I took over service. It was a struggle to start with. We had a lot of bikes, lots of issues, but it started to work out and things are going well, and then we started getting really positive feedback, and that was going really well up until the point that the company folded in end of January 2020, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a roundabout then.
My head gets scrambled because COVID ballsed up timelines for everyone.
Absolutely. I mean, I get a little bit confused with those timelines because I tried to do a tour of the factory just before COVID lockdown, and at that point they stopped the tours of the factory. Yeah. And then the rumours had already started about them closing down. But anyway, I don't want to really talk about that. That's not really what the video's about. So obviously, after the demise of Donnington, then you set up independently, and you now have your business.
Not quite.
Motivated.
I did stay with Donnington Norton whilst it's in administration. I was still with them up until the point where TVS had bought the company, and I was interested to see what TVS could do because obviously they've got all the financial backing that Norton will need. If you throw enough money at something, it will work eventually. So I thought this could be really cool, but it also had the feel of going very corporate and very numbered. I might have misread that, but I stuck with it until the point where they said they're going to move it to Solihull. One Sunday afternoon I thought, right, I'm going to have a drive out and see how far this is, and it took me an hour to get there. So 2-hour round trip on a Sunday afternoon, in my head that's a 3-hour round trip on a Monday. That ain't going to work. So yeah, I did leave Norton at that point. I went back to the car trade. This is right in the middle of the pandemic. Obviously the 961s are fickle machines, so there's various people on social media having problems, and so I was trying to help out where I could, try this, check that, I'll try that part, and a few people twigged who I was, and then I got a message one day, would you be able to service my bike for me? Because no one wants to service it. And I said to Natalia, my missus, if we're doing this, we've got to do it properly. So yeah, Motorvated Ltd was born. And to be honest, I think the hardest bit really, thinking of a name for the company. I had so many better names. But you go on company's house, all in use. All the good names are in use. So yeah, Motorvated Ltd was born, and it's grown from thereafter.
I think it is a name which suits though, because you know obviously it's the play on motivated.
Yeah.
And you are most definitely very highly motivated.
That's kind of what I was going for. Yeah.
You know, one thing I would say of my interaction with you, with my own bike and the work you've done for me on my own bike, but also other people that I know, and you've worked on quite a few other 961s that I know their owners, is one thing which comes across is your passion.
Yeah.
Your passion and your attention to detail. And I'm sorry, I'm going to make you blush, but your passion, your attention to detail, and the fact that you go that extra mile. With the work you do, and I've certainly seen that with the stuff that you've done for me, and thank you very much for that. But there's a real passion there. I know you don't just work on the Nortons, or you're looking around the workshop. You've got a lot of different bikes, but what is it about the 961s that you particularly like?
I don't know. I think I must have been born into the wrong decade. When I ride a 961. In my head, I'm a ton-up boy from the 60s, and that's the feeling I get from the bike, and I just enjoy them. I can't really explain it, but I enjoy riding any bike, really. I've got a little 50cc Jalera over there, and I find that hilarious to ride. It's actually my dad's. But 961s, I do enjoy them. I find them a pleasure to work on. I enjoy working on them. I try and treat each bike as though it's my own. So if it's on a lift and I see something that I won't be happy with, if it's my bike, I tend to just do it.
Yeah.
I do write an awful lot of stuff off on invoices. I'd rather the bike goes out how I'd want it for myself. And if it takes a little longer, then so be it. But yeah, regards, I can't pinpoint it as to why I like them, but I don't want to use the cliche word of character. That's what I'm trying to avoid. There's so many buzzwords out there you can use. Like it's quintessentially British.
Yeah.
Quintessentially is a buzzword lately. I just enjoy them.
Yes.
And I can't pinpoint as to why.
Well, I mean, I can articulate what I love about mine. Why I'm passionate about mine is it's got that feel of, as you say, a classic British bike.
Yeah.
And I do own classic British bikes and ride them, but within the context of a modern chassis, modern suspension, modern brakes. So to me, it feels like a classic engine that you can really let rip with it and have some fun and really push the bike hard and ride it. And that's for me. If I took an old classic bike and upgraded it to sort of be rideable.
It's a resto mod.
Yeah, that's
it's a resto mod bike.
Yeah,
and the way I've described it to a lot of people, treat it as a 60s bike, but you ain't got to muck around the carburetors on Sunday.
Yeah.
It's got injectors. You ain't got to do the points again. But apart from that, its core is 60s really. But yeah, a resto mod is about the best way to view it. It's you got hold of your dad's or your granddad's old bike, and I've got some O-rings in, I've got some nice brakes, let's get this thing a bit safer.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think they handle well, and they go all right. I think quite comparable to an old Ducati Monster 900. I think it's not a bad comparison. If you try and describe to someone the power, they've never ridden one. I think the 900 Monster is quite close.
Yeah.
Or TRX 850 is a very close match.
Whilst I've got you here, obviously I want to talk to you about some of the issues with the bikes, because you've got a reputation for having a touch of sorting bikes out for people. And again, the risk of making you blush, I saw a comment on social media the other day that anybody who can say that the bike's been through your workshop can immediately add £1,000 at least in resale value. And I think that's a very fair comment, because we all know that these bikes have had problems. So one question that I want to put to you, and sorry, it's going to be quite a lengthy question, but I bought an SE, which is one of the the first model that came out of the factory, the limited run of 200. In the belief that I was, when I bought that, I was buying that because I was buying a sort of the higher spec bike, and because it was one of the first bikes out of the factory, at that time, they were trying to build them to the highest standard possible, and then later over time, as the company ran into financial problems and other issues that came up, that perhaps the quality of some of the components and things like that fell off. However, on the other side of that, another story that I've heard is people saying, oh well, a lot of the earlier bikes had problems because it was a new design, and they were kind of resolved over time. So there's that kind of tension there. So I wonder if you could give us a bit of insight into that.
Well, you've pretty much covered it really. So you'll have a new model, and then over time you've got to make the model cheaper, but you've got to make it better. So that's down to the purchasing and design engineers really. So there are things on the very early bikes that are better than the later bikes, some bits and bobs, but then there's a lot of improvements with the later bikes. Like your bike in particular has got the later barrels, Nickel barrels. It's got the later cylinder head. It's got later gearbox on it with the 1 down 5 up with the linkage. I mean, the linkage doesn't look great, but it's a much easier gear change, because the early one was with the gear lever directly on the shift mech output shaft. The arc that travels in pretty much opposes the arc of your foot, and gear change can be a bit difficult on the early stuff, I find anyway. Right. You'll probably find an owner of one of those is perfectly fine with it because they know they're but for me it's I find it a bit difficult, especially with my big feet. So yeah, I mean the early stuff, the SEs do go very well. The wheels make a huge difference. Those carbon wheels, big difference on the way the bike just accelerates and corners. You find it very flickable compared to a late bike. But yeah, so it goes two ways. So
I mean, but it's interested me when you told me that, because when we were talking earlier, you said, because you take man out for a test ride and you said it goes really well. Now, that at the moment, mine is the only one I've ridden. You obviously get to ride a lot of them because I know you test ride customers' bikes when they come in. So, what is it particularly about the SEs? Because you say about it's just the lighter weight of the wheels, is it?
The wheels is your biggest improvement. Pretty much night and day. I mean, if you can imagine having a light weight in your hand and throwing your arm around in a circle and then putting a heavy weight in your hand and trying it again, it's going to be a lot slower to speed up and slow down. It's a very coarse way of explaining it, but on a bike, it's a big difference. Rotating mass.
But the engines are the same, are they? With the
core design's the same, there's a lot of billet parts in the earlier bikes. These bits later on went to cast, just as production started to evolve.
So it's interesting that you say that my bike has got later parts on it. I mean, I'm not the first owner of it. I'm actually the third owner of it. And we should say my bike is SE model 123. So if one of the previous owners is watching this video, I'd love you to get in touch with me about it, because I don't know the history of it before I bought it. So possibly it's been back to the factory at least once then for some mods and upgrades.
Yeah, most probably. There were issues with rocker towers coming loose. Norton revised that by lengthening the bolts. Increasing the torque setting, adding Nord locking washers and the thread lock. So it might have been a case that it had a failure in that respect, and at the time the latest stuff was out, so it got upgraded with the latest stuff. But it's always good to see you've got the latest stuff.
I'm delighted that you told me that. Yes.
And the earlier stuff's fine. Just go through it, rework it.
So can we just very briefly, in case anybody's watching and they don't know, they're just going to briefly outline the models and the differences. So the first bikes were the SEs, and that was a 200 limited production. SE, does that? I've always assumed that stands for special edition. Am I?
That's how I've always seen it.
Yeah. So, and then they made the Cafe Racer, and the Sports, didn't they?
I believe so. I mean, it's just before my time.
Right. Yeah.
And to be honest, I view them as Commandos.
Right.
Pre-homologation, Euro 3.
Right.
And that's how I view it, because Norton broke down into so many different models where the core of it's the same. I'm working on the same stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, they'll change the bodywork, change the bars, polish a few bits, pretty much like what they're doing now. And that'd be a new model. And if I try and remember all the little models in that respect, it comes a blur. So.
The only reason I'm asking, Stuart, is that if anybody was interested in buying one, just to kind of understand. So what you're saying is essentially they're the same bikes, the same engine, the same chassis.
Yeah, I mean the Dominator engine and the Commando engines are all identical. We were building engines, and then production will come along, take an engine, put it in a frame. So yeah, the core of the bike is the same. A 2016 Dommy, the core of that is the same as the 2016 Commando. The frame's designed different, obviously, because it's a monoshock with a different rear swing arm. But your core mechanics of it are all the same. So yeah, I view them as Commandos, Dominators, and then say pre-homologation, Euro 3, specialist components, Euro 3, Euro 4. And that's how my head works, regards breaking them down.
Yeah. Okay, I have another question for you. It might be a more difficult one, but you get to work on quite a few of them. What are the kind of common issues that come up? And again, I'm thinking in terms of if somebody's interested in buying one, what sort of issues that you might look out for?
I mean, at the moment, I judge each bike on its own merits. This is why I've not actually worked out any scheduled servicing yet, because each bike comes in, until I've got the lift and gone through it and done a health check, it's an unknown quantity, really. Anything pre-2016, I tend to recommend we do a prior inspection. During the prior inspection, I'm checking out the quality of the riveting on the clutch basket, security of the starter ring gear, assembly of the backlash gear, and also the preload on the spring of the backlash gear, because that was reworked, because I had a few issues with early ones with backlash gear springs breaking. So basically just reduce the preload by 2. Adjustment and assembly of the shift met gear. Quite a few of those got quite a bit of play in them, and you just take it apart, fettle it a little bit, rework it, you can take that play out, and it improves the quality of the gear selection no end. Little bits like that, and it all adds up to being improvement. There's various other little bits in there. I replaced the starter motor gasket with a better quality item. Whilst the starter's out, I'll strip that down, clean the contacts, make sure they're making good contact on the solenoid plunger. And that's sort of a one-hit deal. Once you've done it, the years it comes back thereafter for servicing, you ain't got to redo that. It's first visit, that's done. Relays, these were sort of spring 2016 onwards. Norton changed suppliers of wiring harnesses, and they came with a different relay, unbranded, blue in colour. They have been known to cause quite a few issues. Those I just upgraded with Bosch straight away. There's various other sensors and core packs on there. Often they're copies of Bosch items like camshaft sensor or the core pack. Replace it with Bosch. It's a nice household brand that we can depend on, and not everything is guaranteed 100%, but you always try and get there as best as you can, and a brand like Bosch is something I can trust. So yeah, and again, it's a first visit thing. Once these bits are done, your next service the following year, you're going down hopefully just a routine maintenance.
Yeah, good. Well, I'm hoping that I'm going to be there. I mean, I have to say, I can't remember exactly when I bought mine, maybe 2017. And I've done about 6,500 miles on it, and even though you've picked up on quite a lot of stuff, I've never had a problem with the bike in terms it's never broken down on me or anything,
Touch wood.
So now it's been through your shop and you've picked up on a lot of these things we've just spoken about. I'm hoping it's
your clutch basket's quite loose, wasn't it?
Yeah, so you told me. Yes, I might see if I can do a separate video about some of the work that you've done on me when I get home. So thank you very much for your time then, Stuart. It's been a real pleasure chatting with you. Thank you very much.